Please give a warm welcome to media leader editor Omar Oakes, who will be chatting with Dominic Carter, EVP of the publisher The Sun. Please give them a welcome.
Thank you very much, Steve. Thank you as well to Ella for that really interesting conversation just now about podcasts. If you can stand to listen to work chat in your personal time, please listen to the Media Leader podcast. Episode we've just published is with YouTube's global head of culture, YouTube having their YouTube festival this week. So lots going on, Effectiveness Week, of course, as well.
Is that a shameless plug for YouTube?
I was trying to plug my own podcast, Dominic, but anyway. And also thanks to Ian Whitaker for his talk before. I don't know if I feel smarter or stupider after listening to Ian speak for 10 minutes, but it's definitely interesting, thanks to him. So, Dominic Carter, you are the publisher of The Sun. Yes,
I feel very close to
you. I'm trying to get into the spirit of intimate conversations.
I'm going to sit on your knee nearly. So, carry on, sorry.
Let's talk about what you've been doing in the US. So in case anyone doesn't know, The Sun is now in America, which is very interesting. And it's not just you, your rival companies, publishers, Reach, The Guardian, The Independent, you've all gone stateside in recent years. So it's really interesting. Tell me, why now? What's changed? You've been around for ages, The Sun. Why only now you've gone into the US?
Well, I think that's because you had an old legacy business in print that wouldn't have enabled that to, cross the Atlantic. But in digital world, you can learn a lot and data and all the understanding that we've got around what the consumer wants has enabled us to believe that brand could travel. And let's face facts, we did it in Jan 2020, so it's 3 years in. It's been a pretty incredible growth. It's a huge ad market, apart from anything else, but it's a huge population that's digitally savvy. And I think if you carry the essence of your brand from where we launched 54 years ago in the UK, which is you stand up for those without a voice, you ensure that you continue to challenge those without fear or favour, that brand can travel anywhere because there are always underrepresented communities that you can reach. And understanding what it is that the consumer wants and giving it to them in a way that they want it, I think is what's allowed us to be successful in the US. There are lots of people going there, and I think the competition's always been there. Guardian's there, the Daily Mail's been there for some time as well. And I guess you can learn without a first mover advantage, but you take a second mover advantage. What are the things that we do that we believe could make it successful? So it was feted as one of the fastest growing news brands in the US over the last couple of years. It's done that, and we continue to grow, and it's a really important part of our business now.
I'm fascinated to know, so as you said, The Sun, 54 years old, and the brand is well established in the UK. Whether you want to talk about white van man or any kind of cliches about audience demographics, everyone's been clear about what the Sun brand is. How have the Americans taken to it? Or is The Sun completely different over there? How have you translated the brand over there?
So, well, there's two things actually. One is people think they know what the Sun brand is and that white van man connotation. The reality is if you even went back to the heady days of print, you'd still say actually had more ABC One readers than any other newspaper in the country as a print proposition. It was younger than every newspaper, and that continues through our digital audience. 25% of our audience is under 34, and it's more ABC One and it's actually more female. So I think people's perceptions of what it is are not necessarily fact-based, and they're less understood. So how have we managed to do that in the US? Again, it's about having the right journalists. I've got 140 journalists in the US, and we've grown that over the last 3 years. We're very tuned to the audience that we want to reach. We're again more female in the US. We have editors that are and journalists that are not from the UK. We employ a lot of younger people. It's demonstrably more female in terms of our journalistic operation, and we know the audience that we're therefore catering for. We are based in New York, but not wholly based in New York. So we're on the West Coast. We're through the Middle America as well as being on the East Coast, where the majority of people are, but only at about 70-80% of the staffing. So I think we can talk to the whole of the US, with the right sort of content, and that content, again, it's all about how do you use your data. How do you understand what does the consumer really want and ensuring that you're giving them more of what they want. So Things that we haven't majored on in the US is politics. It's not a big thing for us. We don't take a position on politics.
So you're not going to do traditionally what you've always done in the UK, where election time comes around. You're not going to be kind of plumping for Donald Trump.
No, we'll take a view, and obviously you've always got to reflect what's in the best interest of your reader, whether it's here or whether it's over there. But we were allowed to launch in a year in Jan 2020 when there was an election in November 2020 of that year in the US, but we didn't take a political stance. And that allowed us to actually just take the approach that we do with the Sun here, without having a political stance with it, which is news at the core of what we do, but then do the lifestyle that everyone wants, celebrity that everyone wants, that the Sun is famous for, sport that everyone wants, and personal finance. And that's the thing that's actually allowed us to be incredibly successful, which gives us an incredible brand safe environment for advertisers, because there's nothing controversial in that content.
How has the impact of gambling advertising and the opportunity around that motivated your decision to go into the US? Because we've seen gambling legislation been liberalized in the US. I've lost count now. I think it's 37, 39 states in the US.
50 states now, nearly. It's coming towards 50 states.
Yeah, so there's nearly the whole country where traditionally you haven't been able to do gambling ads in the UK, and obviously the Sun makes a lot of money from gambling ads. I mean, frankly, has that been what's moved the dial in terms of getting you stateside?
No. It was the brand first and its content, and we have a betting and gaming business. Bingo. If you go all the way back to the 70s, bingo playing cards used to be in the Sun it was a core part of the Sun. That's always been part of our business. So betting and gaming. So Vegas, gambling, casinos. And bingo are all part of what we've done in the UK. We've only actually started to move into the US with that betting and gaming business in the last 12 months. And I think it is a lot to do with, obviously, the legislation changes. But you've also got to be very conscious of where, again, it's about how to use your data to understand where you're most likely to be successful. So we haven't taken every part of our betting and gaming business to the US. And we also know there are content areas that we really need to excel on to really lend themselves to growing that business. So we've been very conscious, very mindful, and very definitive around how we're going to do it, and it's a growing part of our business over there as well. As it is for most publishers in the US, or a lot of publishers in the US are also doing it, but I think we've got a lot of expertise, and it's been a part of our business, to say, for the last 40 years, so 50 years. So it's, we're taking that knowledge with us and growing a business in the US around betting and gaming as well.
Yeah, no doubt. And you mentioned the audience for online skewing female, not just in the emerging US market, but in the UK as well. And we've seen, the Mail Online, seen huge audience traffic driven by celebrity lifestyle content. And it seems that publishers are doing more of that, and it's attracting a lot of female readership compared to traditional print. But at the same time, you've seen a lot of issues around news and monetizing news content. So keyword blocking, for example, has been a huge issue. I mean, have you seen a parallel between what we've seen in the UK and Europe around that and happening as well in the US, that continued struggle with perhaps advertisers being skittish, not wanting to invest ads around news compared to other sorts of content?
So the reality is in the US it's slightly different, but it's still not where you'll make your money. You'll make your money more on lifestyle and finance than you will on news, but it's definitely not as skittish over there as it is here. And the reality is that I think it's, news provides a fantastic opportunity for advertisers anyway. I get brand safety, but it's actually quite lazy. The keyword blocking is quite lazy from advertisers. There's an opportunity to tap into things that right now, even with what's going on at the moment, they may say, well, actually, we don't really want to be associated with what's going on in Israel and Gaza, which for all the obvious reasons. But there are also, in any times like this, there are real hero stories that come out as well that are good things to be associated with. And I think people, need to understand how you access and unlock the potential of large-scale audiences when subjects arise that are really important to them. And there are always opportunities, but you have to be mindful, of course, that you don't want to compromise your brand and by the wrong association, but there are always opportunities to have a right association with the right stories that come out in a news agenda, and I think there are opportunities that are missed. And if you went back in time, there was always those opportunities probably were taken more advantage of, in the decades in the past, where advertisers were more fleet of foot around it and less cautious. And I get that in social media, they have to be really a lot more careful, but they're also, as a result, missing out on opportunities. So I'd always say advertisers should think about their keyword blocking, really understand what it is they want to block versus what they're missing out on, and I don't think that's done enough.
So just to clarify this point, as the Sun develops in the US and in the UK as well, you're still really keen for the Sun to be known as that hard-hitting news brand,
We're a news brand.
Punchy, aggressive journalist chasing down stories, as opposed to just celebrity lifestyle content, as valuable and as wonderful as that is.
That's always been part of the Sun. I mean, from all of days, from bizarre pages to the letters page, the Dear Deirdre, to the horoscopes. I mean, the Sun has always been an entertainment channel that satisfied the needs from the hard, which is the news, to the soft, which is the lifestyle. And we've always done that. So reflecting that in your digital audience is just appealing to a diverse range of interest and communities that we want to reach. So we've not changed anything. News is still the core of what we do, and the bulk of the money that we spend is on journalism, and journalism to produce news stories that allow us to live in a democratic society in the way that we do. So that is the core of what we do, and that attracts the largest audiences. And without doing that, you can't make the rest of it work. And that's why we major mostly with our journalism interests on news, but we also have to reflect the fact that people that read news also buy things, are also interested in lifestyle and are all interested in frivolity, and therefore we have to reflect that diverse audience and those diverse interests by everything that we do every day.
Yeah. Regardless of the nature of the content, I'm sure you would say that all of the content that you do is quality content, or at least aspiring to do quality content. It's very important. Talk to me about Made for Advertising, because you took the decision some time ago to actually phase out working with vendors such as Taboola, Outbrain, for example, recommendation engines where they point you to kind of use the word frivolity before, fun content, let's say, that takes you to other parts of the internet, and there are fees associated with that. But you actually swapped that out for your own internal recommendation content engine. I mean, talk to me about why you took that decision.
Because I think you've got to, at the heart of what you do is look after the customer and the user experience. You can overpopulate a site with advertising, and it's a poor customer experience, and those customers won't remain, and they won't keep coming back to you. So you've got to make sure that the experience when they land on the site is as good as it should be, which means, don't put too many ads in it, and don't put things in that interrupt the whole reading experience. So we've taken more out of our site over the last few years than put stuff in, and actually it has a really positive impact in terms of the value of the advertising that you have got on the site. As for the other part of the question, this is all about, and I've mentioned data a couple of times. It's understanding your consumer, to the point of what it is that you want them to do next. And the more you understand their preference, opinion, and emotion, which is what we've managed to do through 2016, building a Nucleus platform, which is an insight platform, an audience insight platform, it's enabled us to work out that we believe we could out-monetize those content recommendation engines. It's also a much better user experience than sending them out of your site to some nefarious site, with a clickbait headline, which is effectively what a lot of those, content recommendations.
So in retrospect, you recognise that those external partners were leading to people to use the word nefarious.
I think so, and and I don't think it's a good user experience. And the objective is to keep people in the site. And actually, the more you understand them, the more you can recirculate them around your site and keep them for longer. And the more you understand that preference and opinion, then what you do is you give them the thing that's the next best, the next most likely thing that they're going to do. And that's what we've been able to do. And what we've proven is that we could double the revenues, of what were MRGs from the content recommendation engines. But it's taken time to do it. It took us. We worked on it for about 2 years before we actually switched them off. So I think it's been an incredibly successful transition for us. It doesn't necessarily work for everybody, because the lure of a guaranteed revenue, versus what we did, which was to take a couple of years to really interrogate and test that we could out-monetize it. some people haven't got the luxury of doing that. We had the luxury of doing that, and we had teams on it for that period of time to ensure that we, before we switched it off, that we knew we could out-monetize them. And let's say we've doubled the revenue, so it was the right thing to do. And it's also a much better user experience.
Yeah, you mentioned the user experience. I mean, how would you characterize the last 10, 15, 20 years with digital publishing, where everyone's used to cookie pop-ups, they're made for advertising, kind of links, video ads that pop up all over the place? Would you recognise, not just in The Sun or News UK, but across the whole publishing industry, that frankly the user experience for online publishing just hasn't been good enough, and perhaps it's held you back commercially?
I think for some it possibly has. I don't think it hasn't held us back by not doing it, you mean?
In terms of the user experience, everything I mentioned in terms of all the collateral that you see on web pages.
On some.
Yeah. I mean, in general, would you say that publishers, frankly, didn't do enough to make the user experience as good as it should have been?
Yeah, I think that they're in a business. We're all in a business where you've got a major part of your business, which is a legacy part of your business, which is in print, and that we all know has been declining for some time. And if you focus just on that platform, of course, then you're chasing a downward revenue line. What people were trying to do is to just monetize digital, as they publish the same and more, just to try and monetize it, put more ads on a page, and that damages the user experience. So, from our point of view, we haven't wanted to do that. The first thing is you've got to build a brand online that's reflective of the brand that you came from, which was your print platform. Become platform agnostic, and actually give the customer what they want, which is not to be interrupted when they're trying to consume a piece of content. So I think some publishers have probably done that too much, and I think it does damage, and I think it has damaged possibly the industry. But we're getting a lot better at it as an industry, and I think certainly when you look at the quality publishers, which I would say every newspaper in this country is a quality publisher, rather than a digital only publisher, which sometimes has probably done that more than newsbrand publishers, and then been able to monetize them at scale through a platform like Ozone. It's just a huge opportunity for advertisers that's probably been missed out on.
Okay, we are out of time, but last question for you. I mean, learnings now that you've been in the US for 3.5 years, I'm sure a lot of people in the room, if you're not already looking stateside, with the increasingly digital and international nature of this industry, it's always, a temptation to see what you can do across the pond. Is there anything that you've learned in particular that's not obvious that if you go back 3 years you would do again? Any advice for our audience?
Look, I think people, because it looks like a pot of gold, there's so much digital revenue there, and there is such a large-scale audience. People assume that they can just go and publish and they can make money. The reality is you've got to build it slower than you may imagine. And over the last 3 years, we've gone from 20 to 140 thereabouts journalists. So we've built it through time, and you have to be prepared to invest and test. And I think that's what some people need to understand, that it isn't simple. It is competitive in the same way it's competitive here, and you have to keep a unique tone of voice, that we know we have as The Sun, and we've taken that into the US. So don't try to be, something different. Be the thing that you are, and that will carry you through. But be prepared to invest for the long term, and it will yield its dividends. And I think it's easier for us, having done it 3 years ago, than it is for someone today, because the market is slightly different. I think Google's changed a lot of its algorithms. Social, as you know, is not the same as it was at that point. So it's harder for people to go and break that market now than it was when we did it. But in 3 years, I think it's become a really successful part of our business. And I think for everybody else that wants to be there, you should try, but be prepared to invest. It's not that straightforward as it was then.
Yeah, well, I'm sure we'll all be watching closely. And I'm sure also Rupert Murdoch as well, who, The Sun has always been a very important brand to his heart. How do you see things changing finally with Lachlan, his son, at the helm now?
Well, Lachlan was chair of News Corp and executive chair of Fox, and the only difference is that he becomes executive chair of News Corp as well. So no change.
So Rupert's still very much kind of a watchful eye over everything.
Well, no change in terms of the way the business is operating, because Lachlan sat across both of them anyway. But no, I think it's the end of an era in so many ways that Rupert built this business, and I think his legacy will live on. And I'm absolutely certain that this will continue to be the most dynamic media business in the world.
Fascinating. Please give a big hand to Dominic Carter. Thank you.